I still remember the weight of that uniform in my hands. The smell of starch and dust. The sharp creases that used to define my life as much as the medals I earned. That morning, at the airport, I realized I wasn't going back. I stood there, staring at the gates that led to a future I had trained for all my life, and turned my back on it. People passed me by, unaware that a man was quietly burying a version of himself. I had been a soldier. Disciplined. Loyal. Unquestioning. But love turned every rule I knew into a battlefield I couldn't win. I was 28 when I met her. Her name was Hannah. She wasn't the kind of woman who drew attention, not loud, not bold, but there was something about the way she looked at the world that disarmed me. It was during a brief leave, one of those short breaks that never really felt like freedom. My unit had returned from overseas, and I was allowed a few days in the city. I went to a small cafe near the station, just to feel human again. The place smelled of coffee and rain. And there she was, sitting by the window, sketching something on a napkin. I still remember the faint smile she gave me when our eyes met. It wasn't flirtatious, it was calm, almost knowing. Like she could see right through the walls I had built around myself. She worked there part-time. When she brought me my coffee, she asked if I wanted sugar. I said no. She smiled again, "You look like someone who likes things bitter." That one sentence stayed with me for weeks. I went back the next day. And the day after that. I told myself it was just for the coffee, but it wasn't. I wanted to hear her voice. To see how the light fell on her hair when she moved behind the counter. We talked about small things at first, the weather, the books she read, the music she liked. She told me she wanted to be a painter, but her parents didn't believe she could make a living from it. I told her I was in the military. She just nodded, as if she already knew. "You don't really smile when you talk about it," she said once. And she was right. For years, I had lived by commands. Orders. I didn't even know who I was when no one was telling me what to do. A week later, I had to return to base. I didn't tell her when I was leaving, I didn't know if I should. But when I went to the cafe that last evening, she wasn't there. Instead, there was a napkin on my usual table, folded neatly. On it, she had written, "For someone who looks at the world like it's a war. I hope you find a reason to stay and fight for peace." I took that napkin with me. I still have it. Months passed. I tried to forget her, the way a soldier learns to forget pain. But during every quiet night, when the barracks went still and the only sound was the echo of boots in the hallway, her voice returned. I started writing letters I never sent. Pages filled with words I didn't know how to say aloud. And then, one day, fate decided for me. Our unit was called back to Seoul for an internal briefing. I had 2 hours of freedom before returning to base. I went back to that cafe, though part of me feared she wouldn't remember me. When I walked in, she was there. She looked up, her eyes widened, and she whispered my name. I don't remember much of what we said. Only that everything I had been holding back came rushing out. We walked through the rain that evening, side by side, our shoulders brushing. She told me about her paintings, her struggles, her dreams. And I told her about the emptiness of command, the silence after the noise of drills, and how her smile had been the only thing that ever made me feel alive. That night, we kissed for the first time. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was like breathing after drowning. After that, nothing was the same. We met whenever I could steal a few hours. Sometimes in the park, sometimes near the old bridge where the city lights touched the water. She brought me sketches of her dreams, and I brought her stories from the field, though I softened the edges, leaving out the parts that would stain her gentle world. She used to trace the scars on my hands and ask, "Does it hurt?" And I would say, "Only when I remember." One night, she said, "If one day you have to choose between the world and me, what will you do?" I didn't answer. I didn't know how to. But deep down, I feared that day would come. It did. A month later, our unit was reassigned to a conflict zone. It was supposed to be confidential, but rumors spread fast. Before leaving, I saw her one last time. She cried quietly, her fingers trembling as she held mine. "Promise me," she whispered, "you'll come back." I promised. And for a long time, I believed I could keep that promise. But war changes people in ways nothing else can. It strips you down until all that's left is instinct, and the faint memory of what you used to be. In the desert, under a sky that never seemed to end, I kept thinking about her. Her laughter, her scent, the way she said my name. When the nights got too long, I would pull out that napkin she'd given me and read it under the dim light of a lantern. For someone who looks at the world like it's a war. I hope you find a reason to stay and fight for peace. One day, a message reached me. My father had fallen ill. I asked for leave to visit him, but it was denied. Orders were orders. That was the first time I disobeyed a command, not for love, not for rebellion, but because something in me broke. They called it desertion. I called it coming home. When I returned to Seoul, I found out my father had already passed. I didn't even get to say goodbye. And when I went to the cafe, it was empty, closed. No sign of her. For days, I searched. Finally, I found her apartment. When she opened the door, she looked at me as if seeing a ghost. She touched my face, her eyes filling with tears. "I thought you'd never come back," she said. "I had to," I answered. "I couldn't lose you too." That night, I told her everything, that I had left the army, that I couldn't go back. She didn't speak for a long time. Then she said something that still echoes in my mind. "Love isn't supposed to destroy who you are. But maybe, sometimes it has to." We packed a few things and left the city before sunrise. No plan. No destination. Just two souls running from a world that no longer fit them. The train carried us through endless mountains, small villages, rivers glimmering like broken glass under the morning light. For the first time, I felt free, and terrified. That night, we stopped in a quiet coastal town. The air smelled of salt and rain. We found a small house to rent, old, but peaceful. We didn't speak of the army, or the future. We just existed. Every morning, she painted by the window while I fixed the fence or fetched water. In the evenings, we cooked together, laughed, and watched the sea. It should have felt like paradise. But inside me, a storm was building. I had betrayed everything I once believed in. And though I told myself I did it for love, part of me wondered if love was enough to fill the emptiness that discipline once held. Sometimes, she caught me staring at the ocean, lost in thought. "What are you thinking?" she'd ask. And I'd smile. Just counting the waves. But really, I was counting the days since I had left everything behind. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The small coastal town became our world, quiet, distant, untouched by the noise of duty or command. At first, I thought I had escaped everything. The uniform, the orders, the guilt. But guilt is like the tide. Even when you turn your back, it finds a way to reach you. Sometimes, in the stillness of night, I would wake up drenched in sweat, dreaming of the sound of boots marching in perfect rhythm. Hannah would place her hand on my chest, feeling my heartbeat, and whisper, "You're safe now." And for a moment, I believed her. She started painting again. Every morning, she'd sit by the window, her canvas bathed in the golden light of dawn. I would watch her, the curve of her neck, the concentration in her eyes, the way she bit her lip when a color didn't feel right. Her paintings were different now. They weren't just landscapes or faces. They carried emotion, freedom, sorrow, love. Sometimes, I caught glimpses of soldiers in the background of her work, small silhouettes walking into fading light. She never explained them, and I never asked. Money became tight. I took odd jobs, fixing roofs, unloading boats, helping the locals with repairs. They didn't ask questions. They just paid in cash, and I was grateful. We lived simply, but there was beauty in it. In the mornings, we'd drink coffee on the porch, and she'd rest her head on my shoulder. In those moments, I thought maybe this was what peace looked like. But peace is fragile. One afternoon, while I was working near the docks, two men in uniforms came asking for me. Not soldiers, police. I saw them from a distance, and before they reached the house, I ran. I didn't tell Hannah the truth. I just said we had to leave again. She didn't argue. She trusted me completely. That trust, it was heavier than any weapon I'd ever carried. We moved inland, to a small farming village. Life there was slower, harsher. The winters were cold, the nights long. But we survived. Together. For a while, it felt like the world had forgotten us. Then one day, while hanging laundry outside, Hannah fainted. At first, I thought it was exhaustion, she had been working too hard. But when we went to the clinic, the doctor looked at me with that kind of silence that tells you everything before the words come. It was her heart. Something she had known for a while, something she hadn't told me. I remember sitting beside her that night, holding her hand, my chest heavy with a pain no battlefield had ever given me. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. She smiled weakly. "Because you already gave up one life for me. I didn't want you to give up this one too." I didn't sleep for days. Every breath she took felt borrowed, fragile. And yet, she still painted. Even when her hands trembled, she painted. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, she asked me to sit for her. "I want to paint you as I see you," she said. I sat by the window, the same way she used to. She painted slowly, pausing often to look at me, as if memorizing every detail. When she finished, she didn't show me the painting. She just whispered, "Promise me you'll look at it when I'm gone." I refused to think of what she meant. But deep down, I knew. 2 weeks later, I woke to silence. Her hand was still in mine, her face calm, her lips curved in a faint smile. The morning light fell on her like a blessing. I didn't cry. Not that day. Not the next. The tears came later, when I opened the painting. It wasn't me in uniform. It wasn't the soldier she had met years ago. It was me, sitting by the ocean, barefoot, my eyes lifted toward the horizon. She had painted me free. There was a note taped to the back of the canvas. "You gave up a life of duty for love. Now promise me you'll live, truly live, for both of us." That was the moment I broke. And the moment I began to heal. For years, I had defined myself by what I'd lost, my career, my honor, my purpose. But Hannah had seen something else in me, something worth saving. I buried her near the cliffs overlooking the sea, where the waves crashed against the rocks like drums of memory. Every morning since then, I visit that spot. I talk to her, even if she can't answer. Sometimes I swear I can still hear her laughter in the wind. The military never found me. Or maybe they did, and decided I had already served my sentence in silence. Either way, I stopped running. I started teaching art at the village school. At first, I could barely draw a straight line. But I learned. Slowly. Patiently. And every time I held a brush, I felt closer to her. The children asked about the scar on my hand, the one that once held a gun. I told them it was from a battle long ago, not on a field, but in my heart. One of them asked, "Did you win?" I smiled. Not exactly. But I learned what's worth fighting for. Years passed. The sea hasn't changed much, but I have. I no longer wear the uniform, but sometimes I still dream of it, not as a burden, but as a memory of the man I used to be. And when I wake, I look at her painting. The one where I'm free. Sometimes I wonder what she'd say if she saw me now, teaching, laughing, living quietly. Maybe she'd smile and say, "You finally found peace." I think I did. Not the kind of peace you earn with medals or victories, but the kind that comes when you stop fighting yourself. There are days when I still feel the ache of loss. When I wish I could hold her one more time, tell her how much she changed me. But then I look at the ocean, endless and alive, and I remember what she said. Love isn't supposed to destroy who you are. But maybe, sometimes it has to. I understand now. She didn't mean love should break you, she meant it should strip away everything that isn't real, until all that's left is truth. And my truth is this. I gave up my career, my uniform, my pride. But in doing so, I found my soul. Every evening, when the sun sinks into the horizon, I walk to the cliffs and sit beside her grave. I tell her about the children, the lessons, the new paintings on the school walls. And before I leave, I whisper, "You were right. Peace was never out there. It was here, all along." The wind carries her scent sometimes, faint but real. The sea keeps whispering her name, like it refuses to forget. And I, once a soldier lost between orders and silence, have learned to live softly. I no longer march. I no longer fight. But every breath I take feels like a quiet salute, not to duty, but to love. I lost everything they said mattered. But maybe love was the only war worth losing. And in losing, I finally won, a life, a peace, and a love that time can't take away.